Kevin, what are you doing?
Well, been playing with tack welds. How do you tie them together? How do you go from a tack weld to a finish weld? Do you weld over the top of the tack? Or do you just run up to it and stop and hop over and start again? So this was all done with my Everlast PowerMTS 221 STI over there. And this is all TIG welded. So this is just a little tiny tack I did with no filler rod. Just melted the top piece into the bottom piece. This is a little longer tack. I did this with a piece of 1/16 of an inch filler wire. And then I hopped over here, and this is a piece of 1/8 inch filler wire. For me, when I'm doing structural welds, you know, I'm trying to put a piece together and I want it to stand up, I'm going to be looking for a nice size fillet. I want to blend it into the two pieces of metal. You know, I want to make sure it's concave just a little so I get good penetration. I want a decent weld there. If I'm going to come across and weld this whole thing now with the TIG welder, when I get to this 1/8 inch fillet that I put in here, I'm just going to run up here and stop and hop over and start again and keep going. Well, if I'm sitting there with the TIG welder and I'm just working along with that 1/8 inch fillet and I'm, you know, putting a weld down in there, when I go from no weld to a weld, I don't want to have a big lump, because now I have to come back and clean up my structural weld and make it more of a cosmetic weld, you know, blend it in so it just goes away. But I don't want to have big lumps and bumps in it. If I get a decent sized tack in there, yeah, I'll run up right to this end of it, I'll stop, I'll blend it in right here, I'll hop over, I'll pick up my weld again, and I'll keep on going. If I do a tack weld with like that little 1/16 of an inch filler wire, so I've got this tiny, tiny little tack in there. It's kind of long for a tack weld, but it's, you know, structural, quote unquote. If that was the only weld, this would stand up just fine, but it's too small. The weld is too small for the finished piece, so I'm going to have to build that weld up. So if this was the only tack weld, that little 1/16 of an inch filler wire, and I'm going to run across here, I'm going to run right over the top of that one. I'm just going to blend that in. I might not give it as many dabs with the filler wire. You know, I might speed up just a little bit as I go across the top of it, just to try to blend it in to hide it all. But that way it will all come out looking better cosmetically. And of course on this end with that little fuse weld right there, where I just borrowed a little piece of metal off the top piece and flowed it down in. Of course I'm going to have to come back with some 1/16 of an inch, 3/32, whatever I'm doing my final weld with. Yeah, I'm going to run right over the top of that puppy too, just so I've got a nice, good, strong joint right there. And of course on the back side of this piece of metal, I'm not leaving you stick guys out. So on this end, this is done with the MIG welder. This is done with the MIG welder. And you can see it blends in nice, it flows in nice. I would just come in and fill in between those. So if I was going to finish this whole joint out, and those were the kind of tacks I had in there, I'd just come back with the MIG, I'd go in between them. I'd start my weld right here at the end of the tack, back up just a second, and run over to the next tack. Run up on it a little, back off again. Real quick, zip, zip, back and forth. That'll help blend everybody in, help smooth everybody off. Now, keeping in mind that I'm not the best in the world with a stick welder, with an arc welder, but here's an arc tack with a 7018. Here's another tack on this end with 7018. And again, just like with the MIG, I think these are big enough tacks. It's a big enough little fillet right here where I would start right at the end of this tack and just continue on with my weld. Same in here, start right here at the end and just continue on. I just try to blend it in a little, you know, run it up on there, run it out, run it up to the next tack, just trying to smooth everybody together, tie everybody together.
Let's see you do it.
Uh-oh, you want to see me do it? So now for the TIG portion of it, just coming in on this first tack and tie it in a little at the end of the piece of metal, and then I'm just going to stop. Hop over to the next section, get a puddle going again, and just feed it all in there. Dab 1,000, dab 1,000, dab 1,000. Run up onto that big tack that was there and back it off. For this next section where I've got that little 1/16 of an inch filler tack in there, let's start in a section that's not welded. Get a little tack going, feed it a little of that 1/16 of an inch. And I just want to show you what happens if you run over your tack. As far as what happens to the contour, you know, how the weld differs, where you're just adding more filler wire to it. And let me stop right there. So now for the MIG portion of it, let's do some of this. Another little tack, kind of over the first tack, up onto the second tack and back again. Right up to that tack and stop. Hop over that tack. Come on. Up to the next tack and stop. So this is where I started in with the tack, or the TIG welding again. I had a little bit of a tack right in here. So start at this end, blend it up into it, hop over, blend back in that way, and put a little weld in, or put a little fillet in. This is where that second weld was, and I just I stopped with my filler rod and just kind of drew it up onto the tack weld that was there, back over and stopped. Now here, this is where I started in no weld with that 1/16 of an inch filler wire. Dab, 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 dab. And you can see all of a sudden the texture kind of changed right here. It went from, you know, an okay looking weld, and it got real smooth all of a sudden, and it got much bigger. Here's that original 1/16 of an inch filler tack down in the bottom of the joint, and you can see how much bigger the rest of the weld got when I went over the top of it again with that 1/16 of an inch. And I just dabbed up to here and drew it back across, and that's why this is smooth right in here. For the MIG welding side, there was a tack right here. Start here, move in, hop over this tack that was there, add another little tack in there. I think I need to practice my MIG welding. So now on the stick welding portion of it, start right here, fill it in this way, up onto that tack, back off again, stop. Hop over that tack, same thing. Start it up, move along here a little, stop. So there's definitely lots of different ways you can do it. You know, whether you put a nice big, you know, tack weld in and you just weld up to the ends and stop and call it done that way. You put a tiny, tiny little tack in there just to hold everybody still long enough to come along and weld everybody all in one nice, you know, smooth, fluid motion. So you got just one even bead going across there. It really kind of boils down to, what are you trying to do? You know, am I doing a structural weld where nobody's going to see it? Or am I doing a cosmetic weld where everybody's going to see it? Or am I trying to make a weld that I can just grind down and make go away, where you don't even know there's a weld there? So hopefully that helps clear up any questions you may have. I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to pop out to my website, see what's going on out there, and I'll catch you next time.